All right, thank you. I want to welcome everybody to the City Commission meeting of May 28th, 2024. I want to apologize that we're starting a few minutes behind. We had a shade meeting that we had to talk about union negotiations right prior. So at this time, my name is Chris Villa, and I'm your mayor, and I call this meeting to order. Val, please call the roll.
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. And at this time, I want to remind you all to please silence your cell phones or any electronic devices that you may have at this time. And I'll ask you to please stand for the invocation led by Commissioner Johnson and continue standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd just like to take this time to thank you, God, for all you do for our city, for our county, our state, and our country. And God bless America. We had a great ceremony yesterday for the Memorial Day. It went over very well because you're in charge, God. We know you're in charge. If people would take time to read more in the Bible, they would learn more about you, understand more. And I would encourage everyone to read Hebrews 9 and 10, and you will learn a lot. And thank you, God, so very, very much in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, our risen Savior. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Commissioner Johnson, for that invocation. We will move to our first item, which is a presentation tonight, which is the mid-year budget review, fiscal year 2024. I'm going to ask our finance director, Michelle, please come to the podium. And the floor is yours, Mrs. Moore.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to briefly review the mid-year budget report. Beginning on page 1 is the government-wide activities. Our original budget, October 1st, was just under $33 million. We had a carry-forward budget amendment of just under $20 million. Then we had 2 budget amendments, one for the water main extension and the fire station state appropriations. Of the fire station appropriation, which was $1,250,000, we have already invoiced and received $727,000 of that money. Included in the revenue also, in January, we started charging a 3% convenience fee for anyone that used a credit card to pay utilities. And so far in the first quarter of this calendar year, we have received $32,000 offsetting the cost of those fees that we incur. Also, we started using Orange Lien data to process our liens, and in the month of April alone, we earned $1,155 from that service. And looking at our expenses on the bottom of page 1, so it's 6 months. Obviously, we should be around 50%. We're looking very good. We do have the road and streets. Actual is a little bit low, but we have 2 vacant positions, which we're filling currently. And there are some timing differences with payroll and expenditure purchases, but overall, we're actually in line with where we need to be. On page 2, the next 2 pages, 2 and 3, really provide more detail to the revenue in the chart on page 1. So I won't go into any detail other than to say that currently we have brought in 89.18% of our property tax revenue. And then the expenditures for the general fund are starting on page 4. 4 and 5. On 5 is the CRA. I do have an interlocal share post-VAB budget amendment, which is on the agenda for tonight to true up this amount. And then we decreased our professional fees and hired the part-time events coordinator. So those are some changes to this original budget. And because we are low on our payroll, but part of that is because the CRA police staffing, we originally had 3 in the budget, but we currently only have 1 officer designated as the CRA. Then on page 6, this is the beginning of the enterprise funds revenue. Last year, or I'm sorry, this year in October was the last year of the 5.5% increase in revenue for water and sewer. And right now we are at just 3 to 3.5%, within 3.5% of our current budget. So things are looking very good. We have 5,915 active accounts, up from 5,832 last year. Then on page 7 is the enterprise expenditures. Again, there's always some purchasing timing differences with the way payroll falls within the 6 months, but we are close to 50%. Repairs and maintenance is a little bit high, but I do have a budget amendment in there for Wire 3 damage reimbursement money that we're going to add back to the budget, and that's on the agenda tonight as well. That's $75,000. And then moving to page 8, we have our investments. We do have a laddered approach to our investments. We have 3 treasury bills that are Wells Fargo securities with 3, 4, and 12-month maturity terms. We have 3 CDs at Intercoastal that are 3, 6, and 12 months. And then we have money in the local government investment pool. All of our earnings percentages are 4 to 5.5%, so they've really increased over the last couple of years. To date, our general fund checking account, which is in Truist, has earned $241,000, and our investment earnings are just under $695,000 in 6 months. And then the last, page 9 has our current notes and loans with the maturity dates, where we have outstanding principal balance of $6,053,000, and this is down from this 12 months ago, which was $7.9 million. And then on page 10, this is a report of our current projects, the activity, the encumbrances, and the remaining budget. And then I did add a column for pending appropriations and grants that are applied for. Does anyone have any questions on the budget report?
Are there any questions for staff? No, thank you very much, Ms. Moore, for taking the time to compile all of this for us. We really appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to move down to number 3 on our agenda tonight, which is public comments. This is the audience's opportunity to speak about anything not on our agenda tonight. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Yes, sir. Mr. Legare, you'll have 5 minutes. Just state your address
Just taking it.
and your name.
Jim Legare, 342 Burley. I was wondering if I could get an update on what the ballot is going to look like for Holly Hill, of who's applied and so forth.
Probably wait until,
What?
I think you'll probably wait until candidate qualifying ends.
Yeah. Well, I'll address that right after public comments. Yep. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, ma'am. She raised her hand first. Yep. Just state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
My name is Cindy Mitchell. I live at 135 7th Street in Holly Hill for the last 40 years. I am retired now from the city of Holly Hill after 35 years of service. After witnessing the loss of witnessing the loss of Parks and Recreation Department and also Public Works Waste Pickup Service, I feel that it is time for me to speak up in behalf of the City of Holly Hills Police Department. After experiencing peace of mind, as it has been a comfort to know that in time of need, the layer of safety provided will remain intact as is. I acknowledge there is a problem. The solution is let's address it ourselves and let's fix it. I do not wish my taxes to continue to rise while my local level of security goes away. I trust all of you to make the right decision to continue to protect all of us.
Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell. All right. And did you have your hand up? Yes, ma'am. Just state your name and address.
My name is Joni Roberts. I live at 1029 Alabama Avenue here in Holly Hill. There's a townhome development going in both across by Flowbridge as well as 15 units going in right behind our western building. The HOA is called Mirage at Holly Hill, and it's 4 buildings running east-west. And the western building has 15 townhomes going in behind it. And the road coming out hits, of course, to Alabama. It's a cul-de-sac, and then it entrance and exits onto Alabama. And I was hoping between the dog park just down the road and the speeders that go up and down that road so much that I have no idea if it's in the plans or not, to have a 3-way stop so that people coming out of those 15 townhomes that are being built have a stop. Alabama has a stop on either side. It would help slow down traffic because we have a lot of 60, 70 mile per hour down that road with all the children and all the dogs at the dog park and everything. It's really quite dangerous. So I was hoping for a 3-way stop there. Okay, just wanted you
Thank you,
look
Mrs.
into that.
Roberts.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission about anything not on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public comments. And if the commission will oblige me, I just want to comment, Mr. Legary, right now, as far as I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Manning, there are 2 people signed up for Commissioner District 1. For the mayor's seat, we have 1 person signed up, that's Commissioner Penny, and 1 person signed up for Commissioner Danio's seat at this point. So qualifying is not until halfway through June, and then once that closes, it's like June 6th. 14th. Okay, so on the 14th at noon, we'll know who all the candidates are who are running for the 3 open seats. So, so I hope that helps a little bit. And also, you can go on the county's website, the election supervisor, yeah, and they update it there as well. And ma'am, speaking to Alabama, right now there's not any plans for a 3-way. There will be a stop sign where that development comes out onto Alabama, just to answer your question. We could talk more about it afterwards, so. All right. Now, moving forward, we are going to number 4, which is the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the May 14th, 2024 regular city commission meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from Vice Mayor Penny, a second from, was it Commissioner Johnson?
Second.
From Commissioner Johnson. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the minutes? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. We'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries unanimously. And now we'll move down to our consent agenda, items 1 through 4. Would a city commissioner like to remove any item on the agenda for discussion? Okay. The action proposed is stated for each item on the consent agenda. Unless a city commissioner removes an item from the consent agenda, no discussion on individual items will occur, and a single motion will approve all items. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak about anything on our consent agenda tonight? Seeing none, I'll close public participation. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda, items 1 through 4.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Curry and a second from Commissioner Danio. No discussion is required. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the consent agenda is approved unanimously. Now we're moving to our regular agenda, which number 1 is a request for a lien reduction, 909 Oleander Avenue. Mr. Forte.
Thank you, Mayor. The city received a request for code enforcement lien reduction that was placed upon the property located at 909 Oleander. The property is currently owned by Nancy Purdy and does not have a homestead exemption. According to the claim of lien recorded on March 7th, 2024, the property has been accumulating fines for violations for the following reasons. Violation of Section 114-727 for fence maintenance, IPMC 304.7 for roofs and drainage, IPMC 304.1 for exterior maintenance for damage to soffits, and IPMC 304.1 for exterior maintenance repairs to fascia and trim. The order of lien is applied a special master fee of $250 plus $50 per day per violation against the property. The fine began accumulating 90 days after the October 27, 2023 date. The property came into compliance on March 4th, 2024. As of the request for the lien reduction, the amount of the lien was $11,600 plus administrative costs and fees. The property is not for sale and has not been sold. The owner is requesting a reduction because her son passed away from COVID and he helped pay the bills, and she had a loan to repair the property that was in her son's name, and she's on Social Security and only works part-time. So I negotiated a reduction price with the owner, and we entered an agreement to reduce the lien to $1,679.34.
Thank you, Mr. Forte. Are there any questions from the commission? All right, seeing none at this time, we will open this up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this tonight? All right, is the applicant here that you know of, Mr. Forte?
No.
All right. With that, I'll close public comments, and I will entertain a motion for approval.
Motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this lien reduction. Motion made by Commissioner Johnson, a second made by Commissioner Danio. Is there any discussion needed? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Now moving to our public hearings. Our first ordinance here tonight is ordinance 2024-0-3078 for first reading. Mr. Simpson.
Ordinance number 2024-0-3078 by title only for first reading. An ordinance of the City of Holly Hill for creating separations requirements and adding definitions, amending sections 114-353 and 114-593 and 78-14 of the City Code, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, and providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Yes, Mayor, Commission. Just a little history on medical marijuana in the state. Back in 2014, the Compassionate Use Act legalized low-level THC for patients with cancer and epilepsy, along with ALS, or Lou Gehrig's syndrome. In November of 2016, the Florida Medical Marijuana Legalization Initiative referendum, which was Amendment 2, that passed with 71.3% of the vote and expanded the medical marijuana program. While the Florida legislature worked on establishing the rules for administration of the production and distribution systems for medical marijuana and how that would affect local zoning regulations, the city adopted an ordinance, Ordinance 2988, which established a 12-month marijuana moratorium. Well, in 2017, the Florida legislature did establish a framework for medical marijuana, and within those guidelines, the legislature mandated that municipalities could do one of two things. They could either outright ban medical marijuana dispensaries, or they could permit them anywhere that a prescription pharmacy was permitted. So many of the municipalities in the area did choose to ban medical marijuana, but the City Commission of Holly Hill chose to respect the will of the voters by repealing the moratorium and allowing licensed medical marijuana dispensaries within the city. As the number of dispensaries grows in the state, there has been concern regarding any negative impacts that result from clusters of multiple state-licensed marijuana retail facilities that may group in close proximity to one another. Now, this has not become a problem in the city of Holly Hill as of yet, and so staff would like to be proactive in avoiding any potential negative impacts. For this reason, staff is proposing that a minimum distance of 1 mile be required between pharmacies, and this would include medical marijuana dispensaries. Now, to establish the minimum distance requirement, the following language is proposed. Pharmacies, to include licensed medical marijuana treatment centers and dispensaries, shall not be located within 1 mile as the crow flies of another pharmacy. The distance shall be measured as the linear distance between the two closest property lines. In order to clarify what is meant by the term pharmacy, which currently does not exist in our land development regulations, staff is requesting the proposed definition and that it be added to the definitions portion of the land development regulations. Pharmacy, an establishment engaged in the retail sale of prescription drugs. Accessory uses may include automated teller machines and facilities providing drive-through service. The term also includes licensed medical marijuana treatment centers / dispensaries. This issue went before the Board of Planning and Appeals on May 6th in 2024, and they voted unanimously against recommending the proposed ordinance creating a distance requirement. Part of their concern was that it would affect, for example, the business model that you see oftentimes with Walgreens and CVS, that they locate across the street from one another. You see the same thing with certain gas stations and Burger King and McDonald's, and they felt that putting in place a distance requirement would interfere with that kind of a business model. So they discussed it on their own and came up with a recommendation that was not put forth by staff. So they were in favor of adding the proposed definition of a pharmacy to the land development regulations, but then they voted 3-2 in favor of recommending an outright ban on any additional medical marijuana facilities except that those that currently exist in the city could remain. So that was what they came up with on their own discussion. Staff's recommendation is that the City Commission adopt an ordinance of the City of Holly Hill, Florida, creating separation requirements between pharmacies, including medical marijuana dispensaries, and adding definitions, amending sections 114-353 and 114-593 and 78-14 of the Land Development Regulations, providing for codification, providing for conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, and providing an effective date.
Thank you very much, Brian. Let me clarify with you. So staff's recommendation is to continue on what we as a commission discussed previous to it going to BOPA, is that correct?
Yes, what was discussed at the workshop was the separation requirement, and so that is staff's recommendation.
Help me understand this. So they were against that separation, but then they wanted an outright ban? Because the two do the same thing, except the way that the separation, as I understand it, is a better way to go about it, I think, without having to necessarily ban a specific type of use. Were you there, Mr. Simpson, for the discussion?
I don't know if you remember May 6th, that was when there was a traffic fatality on 95.
Oh,
And I was deadlocked in traffic.
okay.
I wasn't there, but I was thinking about what you just said and listening. You know, I didn't listen to the meeting. They called me if they had a question about something, which I didn't, but I would say the difference is they were concerned with, it sounds like anyway, that they were concerned with having to regulate the location of pharmacies as well as medical marijuana dispensaries, whereas we can ban any more medical marijuana dispensaries without impacting pharmacies. So that would be the distinction, because, you know, a 1 mile ban, a distance requirement, effectively puts a 2 mile radius around the pharmacy. So, and that's the tough thing with complying with the law. It is kind of odd. We have the ability to ban them, or we just allow them unregulated, which we've chose, or we can say we're going to regulate them, but the law says if we're going to regulate where medical marijuana dispensaries go, that regulation has to apply equally to a pharmacy.
You can't do it that way.
Is that correct? Is that how you
Yes.
understood the conversation?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor.
Well, in my opinion, it seems the day of the brick and mortar traditional pharmacy is a thing of the past. They're not opening up Walgreens, they're not opening up, I don't even know if CVS, they're closing them. So I understand their concern about competition. We already have, what do we have, we have 4 traditional pharmacies in the city now, don't we, Brian? The Holly Hill Pharmacy, the Florida Healthcare, then the 2 Walgreens?
Well, yeah, we have the Walgreens at 1600 North Nova. We have a Walmart at 1905 North Nova. There's one inside there. There's the Publix.
Okay.
Has one, 1850 Ridgewood. There's the Florida Healthcare at 1510 Ridgewood. There was one in the,
Does that not exist, the Holly Hill Pharmacy's not there anymore?
Yeah, it's
In the
there.
north end of town?
Where Goombas.
Yeah, it is.
I guess that's how
It's in
you.
the Riviera
yes,
Plaza.
yes, that one is there as well.
I
Apologize.
mean, a
if
town
that's not
of
on the
4
list.
square miles that has 6 traditional pharmacies, you're pretty close to
We had an
it.
Eckerd's years ago, remember?
Yeah.
Where the Dollar Tree was?
Yeah.
They, that,
Well, and, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
May,
Commissioner Curry.
I would just also, outside of that, it was like, I think 76% or so of our voters back when it came on the ballot that voted for it. So I find a really hard time banning it, but as far as supporting this, I could, because it was such a high percentage of our voters.
78%, but
Was it 78? Okay.
wasn't,
It was
isn't-
71.3
Statewide.
no, the
Statewide.
last election.
statewide.
No, I
In
mean
Holly
just.
Hill.
Holly
for-
Hill.
For Holly Hill,
Higher
Yeah,
yes.
it was like 78%.
Yes.
Isn't the ban would be, future ban? What's in place now is already in place?
What's here now would be able to remain. It would just be a ban on any additional pharmacies or medical marijuana coming into the city.
I would think we would, and I haven't talked to Brian about this, I think they would be considered a grandfather non-conforming use.
Right.
And so, which means they could, there's restrictions for grandfather non-conforming uses. You're allowed to keep it there, you're allowed to repair it, maintain it. You can't expand it, you can't enlarge it. But if you shut it down, say you abandon it and it goes to some other use, you can't reestablish
Right.
that there. So we're not saying there will always be permitted a medical marijuana dispensary in those locations where they currently exist as of the adoption of this ordinance. We will be converting those to non-conforming uses, and they'll have to comply with our non-conforming use regulations.
With the ban?
No, with the ban.
With the ban?
Yeah.
Right, so the way it is
Well, but
in
it
here-
would also be with the distance requirements.
Well, no, because the distance requirements, they're already in place, so they could reopen because they would still be,
Well, they would be, if you're within the distance requirement, you're in non-conformity.
well, they're not, they're pretty much a mile apart now.
But if all the pharmacies and everything, you gotta identify every pharmacy and every medical marijuana dispensary, draw 1 mile circumferences around them. And so if that medical marijuana dispensary happens to be within a mile of a pharmacy, then both the pharmacy and the medical marijuana dispensary are non-conforming uses. You just made them both non-conforming
Well,
uses.
we would have Walgreens and Publix are
It
not,
would be non-conforming use. Yeah, anything within a mile of each other would be
So
non-conforming.
it's not medical versus medical versus medical. It's medical versus Walgreens versus Publix and all that.
It's pharmacy.
Pharmacies.
Pharmacy, and
Which
our
includes-
definition of pharmacy includes traditional pharmacy and medical marijuana dispensaries
Okay,
combined
so
together.
basically, this is just going to eliminate any other pharmacies, period. Because we don't have that many miles in here, and we already got
I haven't
9 of
seen the
them.
map where the 1 mile circumference would be, But so I don't know if there is a location in the city that would be a mile from another pharmacy or medical marijuana dispensary.
Might put it out in the middle of Halifax, in the river somewhere.
In the river?
Yeah,
A floating
a
one?
floating pharmacy. yes.
But, so say you have, say, remember we had Eckerd's.
Right.
Eckerd's became Dollar General. You could not reestablish an Eckerd's there.
Dollar Tree.
No, an Eckerd's there.
No, I'm saying Dollar Tree.
A Dollar Tree, oh. you
Dollar
couldn't- you
25
couldn't-
Tree.
Okay. You couldn't put in an Eckerd's there.
Right.
If it was within a mile of a medical marijuana dispensary or a traditional pharmacy.
Right, it's right next door to Florida Healthcare, so it couldn't go.
So you couldn't do it.
Right. But I mean, the way the city is set up now with all these pharmacies that Brian's talking about and the 3 medical, there's probably not going to be a mile in, if it's the
Probably
way
is.
the crow flies, is how you going to find a mile in between those?
I would assume it would be difficult. I said, because really a 1 mile distance creates a 2 mile buffer. It's a mile on either side. So you just kind of make a 1 mile circumference around, nothing else. No other pharmacy can be within that mile circumference. That covers 2 miles from end to end. So.
Vice Mayor?
Scott, in my opinion, we're being reactive to a situation to try and prevent being overrun with the medical marijuana pharmacies. But with Amendment 3 on the ballot, do we have any idea how a legal marijuana, non-pharmaceutical dispensary is treated in other states? And I guess what I'm trying to ask is,
What is if
Amendment 3 is
passes-
legalize marijuana. So these pharmacies are going to go away and you're just going to go to 7-Eleven and buy it, I'm assuming. Do we have any idea how it may be treated?
I do not. Brian, do you have any?
I don't. That's
What
uncharted
you're
territory
saying,
here.
It would seem odd to me to, at least sitting here today, to regulate licensed medical marijuana dispensaries, but then have unrestricted use of recreational marijuana.
Well, that's my point. It's like,
That doesn't make
does
a
it
lot
all
of
go, does it all go away if Amendment 3 passes?
Yeah,
I guess
is it going to have dispensaries also, or, I see what you're saying.
What I'm asking is that, if-
And I read a lot about it when it first came out. I've always questioned, do medical marijuana dispensaries become a thing of the past if recreational marijuana is approved?
or do you have to have
I
a
don't know.
medical marijuana license to sell it legally?
don't
My
know.
point is, if we're changing the law, and this Amendment 3 is right around the corner, should we
Do we
try,
wait
should
to
we
see?
try and tighten it down a little more to, because what's going to happen? My fear is that if it becomes legal, you could buy it in every other store on Ridgewood Avenue, and I don't want to be known as, I want to be known as 417, not 420.
Hold on one second, Commissioner Curry, until he relinquishes the floor.
No, I'm good, I'm
Okay,
just.
Commissioner Curry.
Scott,
Yes.
could we include language in there now that would be recreational and/or medical marijuana?
You could. I was thinking about that, but the problem would be, and we'd have to see, if it passes, then the state's going to have to adopt laws that implement it. Just like they adopted laws to implement medical marijuana.
Right.
But if
And
we
they
go
get-
ahead and include that in the ordinance, that would take care of that issue.
Not if the state
If they go
says
around
we
us.
don't have any authority
Oh,
to
okay.
regulate
Okay.
the sale of recreational.
And we have no idea what they're going to do if it passes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to muddy the water, but I was like, if we're going to change it,
No,
we
I
might
mean,
as well.
it's a legit, I mean, we could add it and wait to see what happens with Amendment 3.
Yeah.
And then we'll take it out if we need to. I mean,
Yeah.
the worst thing that happens is the state preempts us.
Right. Well, and I think to your concerns too, let's deal with what we know now, and then if it gets approved, the state legislature will take 2, 3, 4 years to ever even implement it. So we'll have time to react to it then once they're doing that. And this can always be changed. Am I correct, Mr. Walker?
This can be changed, and can I add something?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, just a reminder of how all this came about. The concern was with these low-level THC places that we see all over the place. So really, we started out the discussion with the idea of being able to somehow regulate that, and then from there, worked into medical marijuana. At this point, medical marijuana, the facilities that we have are actually very nice, but, so that just a reminder where this all started, and, you know, how we got to this particular point with regard to medical marijuana.
And I think it was the vape shops and stuff, which brings me to another question. I recently visited Long Island, as we know. It was a big thing about going up and visiting my daughter. They have made vapes, flavored vapes, I guess, illegal. That has nothing to do with medical marijuana, any of that, because actually recreational is legal in that state. But could we implement something like that?
I would have to look into it.
To kind of crack down on the vape shops like we were talking about?
I
We
would have
found-
to look into that. Each state has their own laws and authority to do certain things, so I would have to see what our laws say about our authority to regulate. I mean, if you're going to, regulate vaping, you're going to regulate smoking.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They have recreational marijuana there. That's what blew me away. But the flavored vapes are illegal.
Mr.
I would have to research that.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Mr.
don't
Daniel,
know.
did you?
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of targeting the wrong enemy, sort of. Isn't that kind of what we're doing, Brian? I mean, I'm not so sure
What do you mean?
We're fighting the fight we can win. We can't win the fight against the head shops.
but we're kind of maybe putting the cart before the horse here, because, I mean, when does it go to vote? Should we be tabling? They're not.
It's already approved.
We already have a moratorium on opening new shops, right? We
Well,
put that in place?
But that's only because we're considering this. So, for instance, one thing that you're kind of getting at is the old Wells Fargo building on Flomish, right?
Right.
So initially,
We don't have a moratorium.
We don't?
we don't have a moratorium, we never set a moratorium, but
Yeah,
what we
talking about
directed
it.
staff to do is if someone came in to open one of these, tell them that this is already in
There's-
process
yes.
to actually,
Discussing a moratorium.
Right, we discussed that, and then
But
we
not an actual
went to
moratorium.
this, right, with the map. Commission wanted to know so we didn't actually move forward with a moratorium.
so, but let me put it into perspective for you, because I think I get where you're getting at, is the Wells Fargo building, Brian, are they still moving forward with the possibility of putting a marijuana shop there?
There had been
One
some
already
talk
there.
about doing that, and then Wells Fargo didn't want to actually sell to them. They didn't want that use, and so.
Brian,
I-
there's one there.
No,
it's
the
next
old bank.
door.
Or Wells Fargo,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking about the other bank. I'm sorry.
So at this time, I'm not aware of any active discussions. I get asked about it routinely because these companies kind of go through cities and scope out areas and ask these types of questions. But I don't have anything on the table.
Right. So where this really started for the people in the audience watching and listening at home, there was a trend towards all of these marijuana shops opening up in the city of Holly Hill, and as the Vice Mayor so eloquently put, we want to be mile 417, not mile 420, and these shops can open up anywhere, and they have enormous profit margins, and so they can open up in any little tiny store. And so originally, you remember when we first started talking about it, how can we protect what the voters wanted by having those places that have came in good faith and opened up shop and are providing those services to the people that want them, and legally so? How do we allow them to continue, but also not have every other shop in Holly Hill be a marijuana store? So that was the intent here, and I still think that this is getting to that intent, Mr. Danio. I don't think it's...
We're targeting pharmacies, right?
We're not, though. How many pharmacies in the last, since you've been here, how many pharmacies have come to you to ask to come to Holly Hill?
Medical marijuana?
No, traditional pharmacy.
Regular.
I'd venture to say zero.
Maybe one, if that.
Why did they not come here?
I
Things,
can't think of anyone in particular.
so maybe zero?
It hasn't been, let me put it this way, if it has been, it hasn't been in the last couple of years.
Okay.
Nothing
But
recent.
Mayor, isn't that just eliminating the growth of pharmacies and doesn't do anything about these other little head shops,
Well,
like you call them?
Well, pharmacies are closing. So you have across the United States, pharmacies are closing. So more so, they're closing, they're not growing here. So the problem is the state says we have to regulate pharmacy is just the same as any medical marijuana facility. So if we want to cut down on the medical marijuana facilities, then we have to put this into place, keep them where they are. They're not going away, the current ones, but no new ones are going to be opening up shop and making every other facility a medical marijuana facility. So
Yeah, but the head shop, like we're talking about, these other places that are opening up, they're not pharmacies, are they? They're just, what are they?
So you can have certain products within like a gas station, right?
Yeah,
So,
but
you know,
we
certain
already
types
talked
of hemp
about that too.
products.
That's not,
But we can't attack that. So we can't do anything to take that away. Originally, that was a part of the discussion.
Right.
Now what's left, as the Vice Mayor said, is we're tackling what we can get to, which is don't allow any more medical marijuana facilities to open up. And I'm not trying to convince you, like if you want them, that's fine, and you can vote that way, but I just think that we should look towards the future and not allow a medical marijuana facility on every single corner, but keep the ones that are there, because the people overwhelmingly here in our city did vote for it, and so they do have access to it.
Maybe I'm confused. We have, let's just pick one of the new ones that opened up on Ridgewood and 9th Street. Is that a pharmacy or is that just a pot shop?
pharmacy.
Or whatever
That's
you
a
wanna call it?
pharmacy.
On 9th Street, let me see.
Fluent, that's the new.
Is that Fluent you're talking about?
Is that a pharmacy?
That's a pharmacy.
That's it.
It's a pharmacy
Ninth
where you gotta
Street
have
is
a
that,
prescription
what is it
for
called?
medical
What
marijuana.
about
The old car place.
the old, the bank that you got confused with? Is that a
Fluent.
pharmacy?
Yeah, pharmacy.
You're talking about the
Fluent.
Green Dragon, that's a pharmacy.
Green Dragon, that's what it
So how
was.
many pharmacies do we have? I thought we only had 3.
You're
Well, you're
confusing.
talking about traditional or medical marijuana.
Medical marijuana.
So how many do we have, how many specific medical marijuana facilities?
For specific medical marijuana, we have Green Dragon at 915 Ridgewood, we have Fluent at 555 Ridgewood, and we have Vitacan at 1027 North Nova, so that's 3. And then traditional pharmacies, we have the Walgreens, Walmart has one inside, Publix has one in it, Florida Healthcare, and then the Holly Hill Pharmacy. 1, 2, 3, 4,
And the
5.
one in the old Tropic Casual building,
That's
and
not-
then the one
that's not
next
a-
door.
That's not a
And there's a
pharmacy.
Walgreens right on
What
the
are
south
they?
side of
What
the,
do you call them?
So that one is a
That's a
distributor.
distribution
Yeah, they're
center.
distribution.
For just like regular vapes.
They don't have like a store you can come into.
So those can keep popping up
tobacco.
all over.
For
We can't do
tobac-
anything about that.
Yeah, distribution center, or if they're, you know, if it's zoned to go in, yeah. And that one, I think, is tobacco, I think, products, no.
Well, yeah, tobacco or vape, nicotine
Right, nicotine, yeah, that's what I should say.
products. They distribute them from there.
So I think really where the debate is tonight, because we have talked about this a lot, is, and I want to hear from you, Mr. Walker, on your opinion of what the BOPA has proposed. Why is the 1 mile radius, why is that a better option for us to get to where we're trying to go, as opposed to what they said is kind of define it out? Okay, I'll give you the floor.
From what I understand, they would allow more traditional pharmacies to relocate to Holly Hill.
That's what their intent is.
That's what their intent is. By putting an outright ban on medical marijuana pharmacies, they will allow more traditional pharmacies to come to our city.
How is that
They
allowed, though?
They wouldn't be able to do that because if you ban medical marijuana, you would have to completely ban medical marijuana.
That's what they said to do.
That's right. So if
So
they,
explain that to us then, because that's what they voted for, correct?
that's what they'd like to do that, but allow the ones that are here or any active applications that we have in to move forward. So those would be able to remain, those would become legal non-conforming uses. Any other new ones would be banned, and then, as the Vice Mayor correctly stated, any other pharmacies that came in, they would be able to locate, but not medical marijuana.
I didn't think by state law we could do that.
Well-
We have a right to ban medical marijuana dispensaries, right? We could ban them. I mean, the commission voted not to because of the 78% support. But you could have said, no, we have no medical marijuana facilities. But the law wasn't written to say you had to make that decision within so many months of the law being adopted. It wasn't that you had to do it right then or never make that decision again. So you do have the ability to ban medical marijuana facilities. I believe if you do that, you will convert existing medical marijuana facilities to non-conforming uses, because now that use is no longer permitted in the city. The law also says, if you want to regulate them, not ban them, but regulate them, your regulations have to apply equally to pharmacies. And that's where we have to now start treating licensed medical marijuana facilities and traditional pharmacies the same. So if you're going to put a 1-mile moratorium on medical marijuana facilities, you are including pharmacies in that. So what I wasn't there, but my understanding what the planning board said is, we don't want to restrict traditional pharmacies. We do want to restrict any more licensed medical marijuana dispensaries. So I don't know if it was discussed this way, but I think what they're effectively doing is wanting to convert all of them to non-conforming uses. Because I don't know how we would say only those locations that will have a permitted use of a licensed medical marijuana facility. I don't know that we can do that. But I think, so it's converted to a non-conforming use. They'll be able to stay open, keep operating, just go comply with our non-conforming laws. But ultimately, the goal with any non-conformity is they will go away. That's the whole reason they're non-conforming. You don't want them anymore. So eventually the non-conformity will go away. It could take an awful long time, but if somebody decides to take a licensed medical marijuana facility and convert it back to a bank, they won't be able to convert it back to a licensed medical marijuana facility either.
Right.
So is that
That makes
good?
sense. Yep. Is everybody clear on that?
Yeah.
All right. Are there further questions? No? All right. Be formulating a motion here, but we are first going to call, is there anything you want to add, Mr. Walker, to this, for us to think about before the motion is made?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we will open the floor up to the public. This is the audience, yes, sir. Mr. Legary. And just state your name and address again for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Jim Legary, 342 Burley. It seems to me that we have a less than remarkable disbelief in the economics. I think economically, the situation will control itself one way or another. Either people will practice and make money or they won't. And if you overload the community with them, you're restricting the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Legary. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak to the commission about this item? Yes, sir. Mr. Burns.
Arthur J. Burns, 294 Jeffrey Avenue, Holly Hill. I loved your discussion, and I remember the similar discussions we had when this first started all those years ago. And Mr. Simpson makes a point that the existing medical marijuana places will become non-conforming, but so will our existing pharmacies. And those of you who know me know that I was pretty sick in 2018. And I was sitting there as you were talking about and saw the map of the pharmacies. I used the Holly Hill Pharmacy because they're one of the few compounding pharmacies, and they had to make medicine for me that you couldn't just buy it at Walgreens. I used Walgreens because they were inexpensive. We used Publix because my wife would go there. It was easier for her to pick up those things. And Walmart was nice too for those same reasons. And if the big one hit and destroyed the Holly Hill Pharmacy's building, they would be non-conforming and would not be able to rebuild there.
Not true.
Simpson?
I would have to look at that because we have non-conforming structures and non-conforming use. And what you say is correct as it relates to a non-conforming structure. You have to rebuild the structure back to in compliance with our current codes.
Right.
But I'm not sure that if a structure goes, that you lose the right to a use.
It's going to be pretty close.
You can't resume
And-
the use, but you can you can't abandon it. Like, so if where the Holly Hill Pharmacy is, if something else went in there, a different use, they could not come back and put a pharmacy in there. That's for sure.
And that's my concerns.
And they couldn't make
is
it bigger
that
either. Couldn't
we-
make it a bigger,
We're having a huge attack of consequences that were not seen. And I think the Board of Planning and Appeals did the best thing, which is you do the banning. You haven't banned medical marijuana. You have just, by banning it, you have just banned new people from coming in. But the old pharmacies are not non-conforming. So, because I think about, I also use the Florida Healthcare Pharmacy. When you look at how close all of those pharmacies are, they wouldn't be able to do that under today's law. You would have people having to drive further to get their medicines, and you would have less service to the people from those pharmacies that I don't think anybody has a problem with any of the licensed pharmacies. I would hate to see us fall into that trap, especially since I didn't see a case where that's a problem. We haven't had a rush of those businesses coming, and we haven't had that kind of a concern. Maybe this is an ordinance that should be put in the back pocket for after Amendment 3, when we might really have to be concerned about what's happening, rather than impinging current pharmacies, because I heard it said 3 or 4 times, traditional pharmacies are closing, not the ones I know of. I know that there was a new one that opened in Holly Hill that was part of an Ormond pharmacy, in the Winn-Dixie Plaza, if I'm not mistaken. And so we have to be concerned about the pharmacies and not be frightened that the medical marijuana is going to be a problem. I am concerned about Amendment 3, but as you said, it'll take them 3 or 4 years. And if they come along and say the same thing, it's crazy. I mean, they don't even let us regulate taxis because Uber spent a whole lot of money with the legislature. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Is there anyone else in the audience that would, yes, ma'am? And just state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Laura DePass, 629. I apologize because I'm woefully unprepared for this,
No,
but
you're
I
fine.
just heard that 80% was in favor of this. 80% of the residents,
It was a little less than
Just
that.
under.
79
70.
were in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay, I just don't want that to get lost in, I guess, making it work for everyone.
Right.
So I just don't want that to get kind of lost in the.
So you're against the outright ban that keeps
Right,
them
right.
currently, but
80%
then
of the
eventually
city
gets rid
is
of them.
kind of, for this. I don't see how that cannot be highly considered in any decision that's made.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item tonight? All right, seeing none, I'll close public participation. Are there further questions before I ask for a motion? All right, I'll open the floor for a motion. If
Mayor, I'll
anyone,
make a motion that we approve this
as recommended by
as
staff.
as recommended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve as recommended by staff from Commissioner Curry and a second from Vice Mayor Penny. Now, we'll go into discussion. You're the
I
maker of
just
the
have
motion.
a couple comments, Mayor. Just to clarify, this does nothing to existing pharmacies. It will make them non-conforming if they're within the mile, but they're still in business. If they leave that type of business and another type comes in there, then yes, they're not allowed to go back in. Hopefully, this will make them stay. knowing that they won't be able to move out and then move back in later. And I don't think the city has an issue with pharmacies. I mean, I don't know about pharmacies not being built or what have you. I've used Florida Healthcare all the time. But I think our current pharmacies are fine in this ordinance, and it just kind of limits not having too many of those types of pharmacies or the medical marijuana. But I cannot support banning it because of the citizens overwhelmingly approved it. I have to listen to that. So that's all I have to say, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Curry, Vice Mayor?
I have to agree with Commissioner Curry. And as it was pointed out, almost 80% of our voters approved this. My concern is that there's 3 in our city now. You have plenty of access to a medical marijuana pharmacy if you need it. My concern is, I can't remember when the last traditional pharmacy opened in our city. Florida Healthcare relocated like a block away, but there hasn't been a Walgreens, a CVS, the Holly Hill Pharmacy's been there forever, Florida Healthcare's been there forever, Publix has been there forever. But in the past 6 months, we have CO'd 2 medical marijuana facilities on our main street. We've been trying so hard to improve our reputation, and I just don't want to be known as Weed Town USA. And so we're not banning it. I would not ever be in favor of banning it because our citizens supported it. But I think we need to get something on the books. And I'm going to approve this tonight, but I'm going to hope that we can direct staff to look at adding some verbiage to this to also allow us to preempt recreational pharmacies in the future, because your point is well taken, Mr. Mayor, that if it's approved, it might take the legislature a year or 2 to implement how it's going to be regulated. But my concern is that I don't trust Tallahassee, because they have preempted any of our regulations that we can establish on vacation rentals unless we had them in effect before their rules took effect. So for once, I'd like to try to be preemptive. Even if we go too far in preempting these things in the future, we can always loosen it up. But whoever thought we would have all these Airbnbs in Holly Hill? I never did. They'll go to New Smyrna, they'll go to Daytona Beach and Ormond, they want to go to the beach. But I think every one of us has one on our street. You can throw a baseball and hit one from any of your houses. And so that's my concern with recreational marijuana, is that if we don't have something in place, the state's going to preempt it and say we can't do anything unless we had it in effect before they took over, because they know better than us. So I know that's far-reaching, but I think I'm always the guy of compromise. I think this is a great compromise. It doesn't do anything to restrict any traditional pharmacy. It doesn't do anything to restrict any medical marijuana pharmacy. It just is now going to limit the number of medical marijuana pharmacies. And yes, it will limit the number of traditional pharmacies we have, but by golly, we already have 6. How many more of those do we need? And guess what? If CBS wanted to open up 10 pharmacies in our city, I bet we would change this law. So it protects us from what we don't want, and it doesn't hurt anyone that's already here. So that's my point.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Do you have any?
I'm a little confused still, because I feel like it's kind of, I just think our original plan was to keep our reputation or keep it in a forward-moving direction, and what you call head shop seems to nail what I'm trying to eliminate in my mind and get my head wrapped around it. The pharmacies, I never had a problem with to begin with. It was all these other places that just seemed to be popping up, and this does nothing for that. So, I mean, I'll support it because, it just doesn't look like anything that we were trying to tackle to begin with.
Commissioner Daniel, hopefully Mr. Simpson will be able to come back with some information on the nicotine vape, because that's what we initially were discussing, or like he likes to refer to them as head shops, that are just selling vapes, like crazy.
Yeah, the gummies and the treats and, I mean, to me, that was
Right.
my concern.
So I'm hoping maybe he'll be able to find some information on that.
I want you, though, Commissioner, if you don't agree with it, don't just go along. You know, look, you know me, I've been the one lone vote a lot of times, so I want you to vote your conscience tonight, however you think is best for the
Well,
future
it
of the city.
doesn't, it doesn't include any of that stuff that I was thinking that we were trying to tackle, but we do have to limit the overall, I believe that's, you know, I was just hoping that we could figure out a way to kind of kill two birds with one stone, or maybe somehow, like you say, if Mr. Simpson can figure out a way to,
Yeah.
he's laughing. Did you have some gummies before you got here?
No, for the record, no.
No, right?
Mr. Johnson?
I don't think we have a problem with having not enough pharmacies in our area, because even where I live, at my age and my condition, there's at least 4 of them that I can walk to. We have a Walgreens, we have the Publix, we have a Holly Hill Pharmacy, we have a Florida Healthcare, all right so close together that I could actually walk to all of them, and maybe more that I might have missed. So I'm for it. I don't want to ban anything to do with regular pharmacies. I hate to see any more medical marijuana places come in the city, because it doesn't really look good, and I don't use them anyway, so I'd go along with it. I'll have no problem with it.
And what I'll say in closing before vote is thank you very much for the public participation, because it really weighs on me, and I very much have been considering everyone's point of view here tonight. When this started, as Mr. Danio alluded to, we were looking to combat a different part of this issue. You're exactly right. And those shops were popping up everywhere, and we wanted to really crack down on them. This is another part of it that I also wanted to address as well through that same legislation that we would pass here. I got to say, I'm upset with the state because they are not allowing us to be able to regulate this just like any other industry that we could ever talk about here tonight, so it could be a lot easier on us. Because, Mr. Burns, I hear your arguments about the pharmacy. If one closes, then maybe one can't open up there again. And so I would tell you, I've been swayed back and forth, but Vice Mayor, you made a good point of, I believe what will happen is, because first and foremost, I think we all agree up here, no matter what our personal stance is on medical marijuana or marijuana recreational, no matter what that is, the voters spoke here over 70%. I don't remember the exact one, if it's 78, 79. Over 70% is a mandate. And they said that they want access to this. And guess what? We're going to allow them access to it. If we ban them like the BOPA says, I disagree with that, because then once they go out of business, no other one can come. And if there's only 3 or 4, eventually they will all be weeded out at some point. With this type of legislation, you're right, we get ahead of the Amendment 3 issue because we can have staff look more into the recreational part of it, possibly come and add to this. But what it specifically does is allows us to keep in place what we have now, which is servicing the community, that the free market has already dictated that is where it should be, and they are being successful. So we could do that. And if they go out of business in that location, then another one can come up there, and there's still that level of service that I think the voters voted for. So we're still allowing access. But we're also, Mr. Danio, not allowing every other business to become one of these types of shops. So a lot of times I tell a lot of people up here, what we do is choose the lesser evil. And unfortunately, that's a lot of politics. And so tonight, is every piece of legislation perfect? No. But this one here tonight, I think that our intent is to do the right thing. And to add one more thing to your point, staff, and I want staff to hear this, if we get a CVS that says, by the way, CVS and Walgreens, there's a huge article out there just released a couple weeks ago that they are closing hundreds and hundreds of stores across the United States, as well as pharmacies. They're closing over and over and over. Unfortunately, we're having a monopolization. That's a different topic for a different day, but Mr. Burns, you asked about it. I could share that documentation with you, but I want staff to hear that if we do get a CVS come and say, hey, we want to build a great pharmacy here, then I hope that that you will listen to that. Bring it to the commission at that time. I'm sure I won't be here, but have them listen to that, and this can always be undone. We can always say, you know what, this medical marijuana issue has moved forward, we can take this away now. And so I believe that staff would have the wherewithal and the knowledge to be able to come back and do that for us. Yes,
I
ma'am?
just have one quick point to make. I don't want the negative influence or negative connotation to be that we think medical marijuana is bad, because it helps a lot of people. It helps children with seizures. It helps people with varying medical problems. It helps people with varying mental health problems, and it helps people that have physical ailments. So I don't want us to give the impression that it's bad to utilize medical marijuana, because I just think it helps so many people. I just wanted to make that point, Mayor.
Mayor, if I could read one thing, just because it was brought up
Yes,
about
sir.
non-conforming, and I totally agree with what you and Commissioner Penny said, that the rules can always be changed in the future, nothing's set in stone. But just so we know what our non-conforming use restrictions are, that, you know, once you make something, you adopt a regulation, make something non-conforming, that may thereafter continue or be resumed if destroyed, provided it is not enlarged, increased, extended to occupy a greater area than was occupied on such effective date of the adoption or amendment, which would be this ordinance we're talking about if it's adopted second reading. B, it is not moved in whole or in part to any portion of the lot other than that occupied by such use on the such effective date of adoption or amendment. And 3, no additional structure is constructed or erected in connection with such non-conforming use. So, say hypothetically, Walmart wants to remodel, and they can't move the pharmacy to another location. It has to stay in that same spot. So just, no, like you said, we run into issues, and I think if Amendment 3 is passed, and whatever the laws that will ultimately come out of that will probably dictate a whole lot about what we're talking about. And we can always, if Walmart wants to remodel and this creates a problem, we can bring it back to the commission at time. So do y'all want to address it now then? But that's what our restrictions are, right? If we make these non-conforming, which we are because we're putting a distance restriction in. So it makes them non-conforming because they're within that distance restriction. I just wanted to...
One last thing.
Yes.
This is a first reading, so it's going to have a second reading?
Yes, so this is the first reading tonight. All right, before we vote, I want to make sure that everyone is clear on what we're voting on. Are there any further questions? Okay, with that, then we will take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries 5-0 unanimously. All right. Now we're going to move to number 2 of our public hearings, which is 990 Alabama Avenue Storage Facility, special exception. Mr. Walker.
Yes, Mayor, Commission. The applicant is here this evening, Mike Saul, and he is seeking a special exception approval to allow a neighborhood residential storage facility on his parcel, which is zoned R8. The property is approximately 2.4 acres in size. It's located on the north side of Alabama Avenue. It's about 1,000 feet east of Nova Road, and the actual address is 990 Alabama Avenue. The property currently is vacant, but it does abut 7 residential backyards on the west. It abuts vacant residentially zoned property to the east and an industrial planned unit development to the north, and that industrial planned unit development allows personal storage. The applicant would like to build a 1-story, 27,360 square foot neighborhood storage building, as shown on the attached site plan before you all now. Since the property is zoned R8, which is a multifamily residential zoning, a special exception is needed for such a facility. The property's future land use is medium-density residential. In order to approve the neighborhood residential storage facility use at the subject location, the City Commission has to find that the site and conditions meet the requirements of Section 114 22-699. There are 13 items there. They are listed in your staff report. The narrative that is given after each of the listed requirements has been provided by staff in consultation with their consultant, Harry Newkirk of Newkirk Engineering. So I won't go through any of them at this point unless you would like me to, or if there's some that you would like me to get more into, I'll be happy to do that. But at this point, Section 82-346, which is also attached in your staff report, is from this land development regulations, and it provides guidance with regard to reasons why a special exception can be denied by the City Commission. In looking at the reasons for denial and in looking at the various criteria that the applicant must meet, staff reviewed those requirements and the reasons for denial and does not object to the application for a special exception. So in other words, staff didn't see any reasons why within those lists for denial that would apply, and it is staff's opinion that they are meeting the 13 requirements. Based on that, staff recommends special exception approval to allow neighborhood residential storage facilities on a parcel in the R8 zoning district. The subject property is approximately 2.4 acres in size and located on the north side of Alabama Avenue, approximately 1,000 feet west of Nova Road, and is more specifically known as 990 Alabama Avenue in Holly Hill, Florida. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. And before I open it up for questions, we'll do ex parte communication. I have two here tonight, well, really one, but another one I want to communicate to. Back in January 2022, I'm a realtor, as many of you know. I identified the property in question for a buyer of mine for a potential storage facility and spoke with the owner, and at that time discussed some of the ideas of storage facility and discussed a possible partnership, but decided to go separate ways. And so that was well over a year ago, and I have no interest at all in the property anymore, and haven't spoke to the applicant since his application has been made either. So just wanted to, I know I don't have to state that for the record, but wanted to nonetheless. The other ex parte communication that I had on this property recently was with a neighbor who requested information about it because it was stated that it was coming to the BOPA tonight, the Board of Planning and Appeals, but of course it's here with us tonight. So after talking with our attorney, the Scrivener's error is okay because the time and date are all here, so anybody that wants to speak about it can speak about it here tonight. And after explaining the property, she did have a question, and that's what I'm going to lead off on questions with, unless there's any further ex parte communication. All right, seeing none. Her question was, will it have lights at night for security? She wanted it to have lights and security cameras, and could we request that that is required there at the property?
What the information that I was given by the applicant's consultant is that any proposed lighting will be installed per the city's land development regulations with site photometric plan to make sure there's no off-site glare from lighting per the land development regulations, and all lighting will have glare guards to prevent off-site lighting glare. The engineer could better address this issue. I did not have any discussion with them with regard to whether or not the facility would be lit at night. My impression is that there would be some lighting because folks will be able to get access at any time using a card or a key punch. So if they went in at 3 o'clock in the morning, there would be some lighting in order to be able to find their particular storage unit. I did not discuss the issue of cameras at all with the applicant.
And I think it goes to the point of there are homeless people back around the dog park, and so I think security-wise, it would help a lot to have those security measures in place. And then next question is, and just for clarity here, so the property as is zoned for R8, which R8, for the people listening, R8 is our most intensive use possible for residential. It means the most amount of units, the most amount of people in one place. We barely have any R8 zoning. So with that being said, I believe, can they get 44 units onto that small little track? Is it 44?
That 44 is what is permitted by the zoning. Now, it would have to be engineered, obviously, there would be retention, there would be parking, there would be that type of thing.
But if this isn't approved tonight, they could come in tomorrow and pull permits, if it's engineered, to go up to 44 units.
That's correct.
Okay. So you look at 44 residential units on Alabama, or you look at, a few storage units on Alabama. That's what we're looking at tonight.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
How many is a few?
Ask the question.
When you said a few.
I don't know how many. It didn't say in the report.
Brian,
No, well, right now, what we're looking at is the square footage. So
27,000 square feet.
that's the facility, and then there's a portion of that, at least 60% of that area of the structure proposed would be units that are 200 square feet or smaller. So at this point, I haven't been given anything that dictate or shows specifically how many units, but they would be, however many units they can get in the square footage that is proposed and meet the size requirement of the 60%. After that, they would be able to have some flexibility in how big the units would be. So I don't have an exact number of units at this point. That's something that would come, or we would know more when the actual building permit is submitted to go vertical. But the engineer may have an idea at this point of how many.
I mean, I'm guessing it's gonna be a lot more than 44 units. The thing is, if somebody gets a storage unit, they're not gonna be in and out of there every day.
Yeah, but the difference,
Yeah,
the difference
exactly.
is
The
storage
traffic
unit.
isn't
you
gonna be there.
Visit it once every other month, or.
Right.
Right, if you're,
Yeah, or never go back.
if you're thinking about impacts, for example, traffic impacts,
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. If you have a storage unit that is 27,360 square feet, and you look at information that is provided by the engineer, which is based on traffic demand analysis, they suspect that there would be approximately 68 daily trips with a storage facility of the size that is proposed. If they were apartments, 44 apartments, you're looking at 293 daily trips. So the impacts overall, water, sewer, even noise, because in an apartment community, you have more vehicles, you could have a pool and kids and that type of thing. Storage facility is a much less intense use.
Another bus route. Okay. Are there any further questions? All right. Thank you very much, Ray. All right. Would the applicant like to add anything more? All right. Welcome, Mr. Newkirk. Just state your name and your company for the record, and then you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is Harry Newkirk with Newkirk Engineering, 1230 North US Highway 1, Ormond Beach. I'll start off with your question about lighting and security. So lighting would be mounted to the building, screened down so to prevent off-site glare. The property would be surrounded by a fence, 6 feet tall, and gated so no one can just drive in. There will definitely be security cameras and whatnot. You got to protect for vandalism and whatnot, so that'll be surrounding the entire site. None of those cameras will face out into residential properties, not allowed to face out into neighboring properties, but it'll show 100% coverage of the site for protection of the building and, for theft and vandalism, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
So what we do when we're looking at the site, special exception and whatnot, we kind of look at what I say facility demand analysis. So traffic is about 4 times less traffic when you compare apartments to storage. You look at apartments versus storage with respect to height of building. We look at 1-story versus, say, 3-story. The apartment buildings would face right up on their residents, and they would be towering over their buildings. So you got the sun blockage, you got people looking out over balconies. All that goes away with self-storage. Self-storage is usually a morning to afternoon type of use. There will be no one there at nighttime, so you have no noise, lighting minimal. When you look at water sewer demand, you're looking at 40 times less water sewer demand. When you look at, same thing with solid waste. Solid waste, minimal on a site like this. 40 times less solid waste. School bus, we don't need schools. We don't need to have that additional impact to the schools of the 44 units. So from a perspective of concurrency, demand on the local roads and whatnot, it's minimal impact. When it comes in, we'll have an extensive landscape plan to screen this site, and that screening will also help on, off-site lighting impacts. The site will have a stormwater system designed per rules, so we will not be allowed to discharge stormwater off into the neighboring yards and they experience flooding issues. We'll discharge it out into the Alabama right-of-way. Our driveway will have a pipe under it so we don't cause impacts to the right-of-way. There's a water main down the road, so we'll have fire protection, there'll be fire hydrants on the site, that sort of thing. We'll be required to put a fire hydrant on our side of the road, and sewer will be by septic. You have one restroom, basically. It's rarely used, and it's mainly used by the employees. So you got really small demand on a septic tank system versus what we'd be looking at on residential or, lift stations and force mains and that sort of stuff. So I think it's just this development will have less demand on traffic and just city infrastructure. And it really boils down to, in my opinion, that this is a real project moving forward. If someone has issues with it, it's over that, not for what it causes impacts to surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you, Mr. Newkirk. And I see here that you're providing the setbacks well above what is required. So required is 35 feet all the way around. The front, you have almost 200 feet. The north, you have 55. And then both sides, you have 46 and a half. Is that correct?
That is correct. And let me add to that. This isn't the first layout. We had a different layout, and when we brought it forward with planning with Brian Walker, we had to redesign. The building used to be closer to the property lines, and when we made that change, we lost a lot of square footage of the building. So that's why, what you're just talking about, that's why we have such large setbacks on this building.
Because it's been pared back?
Yes.
Substantially?
Yes.
Okay.
From the original concept plan.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Does anybody else have a question? All right, and if anyone comes up, can you just keep track of any questions that may come up from the
Yes,
audience?
sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Newkirk. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item tonight? Yes, sir, you raised your hand first. I'll call you up next, ma'am. Is it Mrs. Roberts? Okay. Yes, sir, just state your name and address for the record, and then you have 5 minutes.
My name's Jerry Bishop. I live on 1719 Evergreen Street. And the question I have is, they've cleared the land and leveled it somewhat. And it's been like that for like a year or so. My backyard's flooding already because they've graded it up a little bit. And for all the years that the junkyard, whatever, was there, it never flooded. So I'm just curious of, are they gonna put tape it away from my property or as a drainage ditch or something? That's what I'm worried about, that's all. Because right now, we get heavy rain, I got a couple sheds back there, and it's wet.
I'll have the engineer address the capacity for the water retention on the property for you when he comes back up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Roberts? And just state your name again and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes.
Joni Roberts at 1029 Alabama Avenue. Just a couple little things. When the original property was sold, I know the realtor who sold it, and he told me, I'm not saying he's right or anything, that the entrance to it was going to be on Gulf Avenue, that there was not supposed to be any entrance from Alabama. Obviously, that has changed.
I think that's a separate project, but I'll get an answer for you.
It was that storage unit. He talked about the storage unit going in and that Gulf was going to, so my question is it just the one entrance off of Alabama? No, nothing off of Gulf, so it flipped it around. And also, just another reason, I knew that the new townhomes going in were going to have a stop sign coming out of their cul-de-sac. It's another reason to have a three-way stop on that road, because that traffic is already ridiculous in terms of speed and quantity, so that three-way stop would really just help now that we're going to have that. Even though it's less than residential, it's still more traffic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to? Yes, sir. And just state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 5 minutes. Wait till you get all the way up there. Sorry, it's just recorded, and we have to keep note of all.
Glenn Brown, and the property's at 1705 Coolidge. We back right up to the fence. Our property's there, and we've had the same issue since they built that gym there. There's no place for all that water to be displaced. They put a little culvert in there. Well, that flooded. We were going to buy a house on Palm. Well, that flooded that whole house. So now it's just going to become a big bowl, because when those buildings are there, where's all that water from both sides going to go? There's, not only that, the impact of the traffic, the noise of the construction, there's beautiful trees over there. And I mean, if you drive by there and look at that, and you would say, I don't want a building. There's no commercial properties from Walmart all the way down east of that, except the golf course. There are no commercial properties there. That's not a commercial neighborhood. You got the dog park. We don't know what's going to be there. Why isn't there going to build? Yeah, the impact of homes, yes, it's going to impact. Well, everything impacts. But now, when you're changing our beautiful little neighborhood with these huge oaks, we have oaks probably 100+ years old, and it's just going to change the whole part of the neighborhood. And I mean, I don't think it's fair, and not enough people, like right next door to us, someone just bought the property. And I'm sure they haven't even been aware of this is going on. So they don't have an impact. And it's like, we feel like, I don't know, there's not enough people. I don't know if this is the final vote. We just got our letter recently to, that this meeting was going to happen. And I feel like all our neighbors are unprepared. There's three of us, and there's, everybody. Now, how far off our property line is the building going to be? So now when I sit outside, I'm looking at the property, I'm looking at all these beautiful trees, and now I'm going to lose that view, and looking at a black fence. Now, I would propose that you people who drive by there and look and say, do I want this in my neighborhood? Thank you for hearing me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes, ma'am. And just state your name and address for the record, and you have 5 minutes.
Susan Blank, 944 Alabama.
What was it, Susan what?
Blank, B-L-A-N-K.
Okay.
When I first heard about this storage facility going in, I was upset about it because I don't want commercial property in our neighborhood. But that, as opposed to 40 units of an apartment building, I can't even imagine. So if it's already zoned so that an apartment building could come in, I would much rather have the storage facility. And the impact, and unfortunately, I agree with these folks. I love that property. I love the trees, but someone purchased it and they're going to do something with it. So I'd much rather have it be a storage facility that's going to have much less impact on our neighborhood. And if it has the big setbacks and things, I think that'll help as well. That's it.
Great. Thank you very much, Mrs. Blank. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this item tonight? No, ma'am, sorry. You can only come up one time. You're worried about the flooding? We'll get you, we will get you that answer. I know the engineer is taking notes during that. So is there anyone else that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public participation. And Mr. Newkirk, if you'd be so kind to come back up. And I know you were taking notes just as I was in there, if you'd like to address some of those.
Yeah, I'll start off with the stormwater. So when the site is designed, we'll have to meet city's land development code on stormwater. We'll have to meet St. John's River Water Management, and we'll have to meet FEMA. And how that works is we analyze multiple stormwater events, which would be, they call it mean annual, 25-year, and a 100-year storm event. A mean annual is like 5 inches of rain in 24 hours. A 25-year storm's 9.5 inches of rain, 24 hours. That's a tropical storm, high intensity. And a 100-year is around 11 inches. And when we analyze that, we have to discharge the site where it does right now, the historical flow patterns. But if those historical flow patterns are in someone's backyard...
Pause for a second, Mr. Newkirk. Are you leaving? Yes. Okay, if you want to leave your number, I can give you these answers after the fact, or you can call me directly and I can talk to you, okay? Val, can you give her my business card? Thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. Newkirk. I just want to make sure they get their answers.
That's perfectly fine.
All right, continue.
So if the historical flow patterns are in the back of someone's yard, we'll take a look at diverting that to where it really goes. It goes to someone's backyard, then it takes a left, and it goes out into the right-of-way. Well, we'll discharge in the right-of-way and bypass going in someone's backyard, because that's where it ultimately ends up anyways. And that would be good for solving some issues with the neighbors' backyards. So when you develop a site, a lot of times you'll see around town is the elevation goes up, and that's what a lot of neighbors have issues with. It comes up, you're like, hey, you're berming us, and where's our drainage going to go? So when we do this on the site, we'll have to have inlets and whatnot around the perimeter so we can move that water so it doesn't back up on the neighbors' yards. And we'll take that out into the right-of-way as kind of what you call bypass drainage. Sometimes they don't do it, and the reason you wouldn't do it is probably save some money, but not a good idea. And this way, this design will put the proper drainage in so we won't cause an issue that results in neighbors not being happy and just creating issues after construction. The access, so apparently there's a project on Gulf and this project's on Alabama. They're not related. They do not tie together. So this project will have one entrance on Alabama. We have no possibility to connect to Gulf. The really good comment from the audience here on the three-way stop. I think it's a great idea to add a three-way stop. Three-way stop wherever on the road is a traffic calming device. You know, something that you do, speed bumps, tabletops, all that sort of stuff to stop people from driving 70 miles an hour in a straightaway. So I think that's a really good idea, three-way stop on Alabama, or any road that has an issue of people driving fast, not stopping. The comment on building setback, our setback is 46 feet from the residential property line. And you gotta look at what that setback entails. It entails, the building's 46 feet, 1 story. You have a 6-foot fence, and the building's not that tall. And in that, we gotta put a landscape buffer, so we gotta plant some trees that, you know, you put them in, they're 12 feet tall. These are oak trees and whatnot, they'll grow in the area back. If there are existing trees within the landscape buffers, our intention is not to remove a single one of them. Because when you remove them, you got to plant trees, and it's much better to have a buffer with native tall trees. It's always preferred. So we will keep as many existing trees as possible. And I believe that there was another comment about commercial versus residential. But
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirk.
I think I can answer most.
Yeah,
pretty much all the time.
I think you got them all, and then I know this gentleman did make a comment about, that there are trees there and everything, and I fully get it, because I actually live in the neighborhood, so I live on Anniston, so I go down the street multiple times a day, and I completely hear you. I wish it could stay trees as well and stay that way. Unfortunately, the city doesn't own it. And I don't own it. I don't have enough money to purchase it. So, when we look at 44 units being able to come in as an apartment complex with a lot less standards that this has, or this project, that's what we're here to discuss today. We can't dictate if it is going to get developed. At some point, it's going to be developed. And it's just a matter of if it's now, then it's a storage facility. If it's later, I could tell you the housing market will fill that up quickly. So I hear your concerns, but I wanted to address it, and I didn't know, you didn't need to comment on it. I don't think it's an engineering question,
No,
but
it's not.
if you had anything further, you can.
No,
Okay,
I don't.
all right. Are there any questions? No, sir. The public comment is closed. I'm sorry. Is there any further questions from the City Commission? All right. Thank you, Mr. Newkirk.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Discussion? No.
I'll open the floor for a motion and then discuss.
And then we'll discuss,
Yep.
right? Okay.
I'll make a motion
Okay,
to
make a-
approve.
There's a motion on the floor to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the floor. Now discussion. Do you want to let Daniel go first?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I was just writing a couple things down. Unfortunately, the first thing that I guess my first answer to people that have problems is, whenever somebody buys a piece of property and they're not happy with what's going to get built, it's kind of like, you kind of should have bought it first, I guess, because unfortunately, we can't stand in the way of progress. And if somebody buys something, they have, as long as it's within their zoning, the opportunity to build, and unfortunately, that's just the way it is. The second thing was when Harry was talking about the 5-year, 25, 100-year. You said in a 100-year storm, you had 11 inches in 24 hours? That's right. So when we had that situation, when we had 23 inches in 24 hours a few years back,
It was a
There's-
500-year storm.
there's no way, no engineering is ever going to alleviate that kind of flooding. So whatever magic bullet you're trying to pull or anything else, that's just the way it is. It's not, it was an anomaly, it's going to happen, we're all going to get flooded. So if something like that happens, it's not going to be an engineering issue, a city issue, or anything else. It's just, that was God's plan for whatever reason. The three-way stop, are we allowed to even consider that?
That's not in this tonight, no.
No, but I mean, or something,
So, in the
city can do-
future, we can, but that's not tonight.
okay.
We don't need
And then the last thing is when you said it earlier about the lesser of two evils. Unfortunately, I mean, it seems like we have storage units all over the place, but I would rather have 4 times less traffic, a better situation, like the young lady said earlier. The storage unit would be the lesser of two evils than having 44 residential units, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Maker of the motion.
I would just like to say also that a lot of us really don't want to see new things come into our area, our space. We aren't the landowners, as you mentioned, and the landowners do have a right. They have a right to build something that can be conformed into our code. I'm very familiar with Newkirk Engineering. They've done several projects in the city and all around the county, actually. And the projects that have been put in by Newkirk Engineering have helped flooding. So I have every belief that this will as well. And I really do believe that if somebody, well, they wouldn't even have to come before us, that wanted to put in apartments or housing, they would just go to our staff, get their permits, and start building. Nobody has any say over that. Over this, we do have some say. And it's a lot less impact on the area. You will have buffers built, you will have vegetation in those buffers, you'll have engineering to help with flooding. And I just think overall, for the big picture, this is a much better project than what could possibly go in there without even coming before us, just going to staff. So that's why I made the motion that I did, Mayor, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Who was the seconder? Was it you?
I second it.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson?
I don't really have anything except on it. I think it's a good project. I like to see things come more and more rather than keep the vacant land and all, because I know how it is with the property owners, and you have to generate an income with it. You can't just let it sit there because you're going to pay property tax on it no matter what. And if you can generate an income, that helps with that and helps with a lot of other things. It'll reduce the impact by not having so much traffic on Alabama there. That's a bad area anyway, because when that light changes at Flomish and Nova, as we saw about a month ago, and somebody came out of, I think it was Danny Baker, and ran into a bicycle there or something, you're always looking. The traffic is so heavy coming up there, so we got so much less traffic impact. I think it's going to be a great project. And then, like I said, the cameras will help a lot with the homeless people back there. The lights will help with it. The traffic around it is going to be quite a bit better, I believe.
Thank you. Vice Mayor, do you have anything? All right. Yeah, I just echo those statements, and sir, I hear you completely, because I also feel that same way. But tonight, as we sit up here, if it's between 44 apartments crammed in there with all the things that entails that, most likely it would be affordable housing with all of the money that the state is giving away and the feds are giving away for that. I would choose this project over it every day. And so, and I am impacted by it, because I do live right on Anniston, and so I get the traffic coming through as well. So trust me, I've given this a lot of thought and energy, but tonight I'm going to be an upvote on this. So with that, is there anything further? All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, the motion carries unanimously. All right, now we're going to move to communications. Mr. Forte, do you want to lead off?
Nothing for me.
No? Okay. All right. Are we still meeting afterwards? Okay.
Yep. Yes.
So I'll go through some things very quickly. Mr. Forte and I and Mr. Walker and Mr. Cox and our CRA consultant met recently with the county. We went over to the county to meet with the county manager, the assistant county manager, the county planner, and a couple other of his staff to discuss the CRA. And we can have a longer discussion about this later, but hey, Val, could you please close that door? Thank you very much. So we discussed the CRA, we discussed what everybody has been meeting about, the community, and all of the ideas that came about, and getting their feedback, because at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the county. And so one of the things that we learned through that meeting is that the overwhelmingly the board is the council, the county council is pushing hard against CRAs and specifically asking for major reductions in expenses or creation of revenues. And as we all know, and for the public listening, CRAs, the money that is supposed to go to the county comes in, collected, and stays right here in the CRA, and that we in turn use that money to beautify the CRA. So that money is not being handed over to the county. So as we learned, the county council isn't too fond of that right now. They're looking for new revenue sources, and they were telling us it's about $1 million a year that they could claw back. And in reality, to be fair, that's what the intention was all along, these 30 or so years ago when this was put into place, was that they would allow this mechanism for us to be able to beautify it because we're on the ground. We can beautify it better than the county can. We know our community better. We do that. And then once that CRA ends, all of that taxable value should be a lot more and then go to the county at that time. So in their defense, that's where they're at. Now, in our defense, we, of course, want to be able to use that money to beautify our own little place. And so one comment I made was, you know, look, we want to be at the table, and we want to claw anything that we can, because Holly Hill a lot of times doesn't get our due or our fair share. And so I will say, with a great staff that has worked very well with the county and all the experience we have in the last few years, been able to do that and to access state funds, access appropriations and whatnot. They commented about Pictona and about how great that has been for the entire CRA and for the entire county. They did mention that FDOT is going to take over LPGA between all the way up to Nova, and the county would prefer them to actually go all the way to US 1, meaning in our city, our LPGA. And so we discussed that, and in discussion, I think that would be better for our city, because then it unlocks a lot of state and federal money that the county doesn't necessarily have to do. And I believe that the county will still be our partner as we look at ways to improve our LPGA in between Nova and US 1. And so I stress, Mr. Johnson, you'll be happy to hear, and you can ask staff, that I vigorously talked about our LPGA and how it needs to be expanded and to help our city so that it's not a choke point on our city. And how right now when you come down US 1, it's almost a mental roadblock to come into 2, and people are just going right around our city, going elsewhere, not feeding our corridor, business corridor, US 1, where we want mom and pop shops. We want that. So traffic there on US 1 equals more of those opportunities for those types of stores. So I made that clear, and they were in agreement, but we talked about how FDOT would be taking that over. And so I would say, if there's any input from the city, and they didn't ask us for this, but if there is, that we would be in support of that. If anyone objects, in your comments, you can bring that back up if you object to that. But I think it's in the best interest of the city for FDOT to actually take over our LPGA. It'll give us more opportunity there. And then they also discussed an industrial area that would create jobs, that the county council is really looking for those types of areas. And we have a very unique industrial area. A lot of people don't realize that we have some of the biggest industries right here in our city, and our industrial area runs almost the whole length of our city, and is very robust. And so we could actually incorporate that now into a CRA and encourage projects to come that could create many, many high-paying jobs, because a lot of the industrial type jobs pay, you know, double, triple what the minimum wage is. So I thought that was a great idea, and I think that we're going to incorporate that into our discussions now, as well as the county council is really looking forward to those types of things. And so the last bit was that the county really wanted to kind of negotiate it down from, we get 100%, maybe down to 60% or even 50%, but staff held firm that, listen, if you give us 60%, we're only going to show you 60% of what we can accomplish, and it isn't going to be as great as 100%. So I think we stick to our guns and try to get the most, but it may become a negotiation at that point whenever the CRA comes up. So that's my notes from the CRA meeting. Mr. Forte, I don't know if you have anything further to add to that, or if I covered it.
No, that pretty much covered it. The only thing that the consultant was looking to do was expand their scope to incorporate bubble plans around those areas. And at this point, I want to get through this phase of their contract, of their scope, before we go back and revisit additional work.
Yes, yeah, to talk about the entertainment districts that we've talked about for years. So we'll revisit that in the future. I want to thank Commissioner Johnson. I wasn't able to be at the Memorial Day, I had a wedding down in South Florida for my niece, so it was the first ever Memorial Day that I've missed here in the city of Holly Hill, but I knew you were going to be there to represent us well as our veteran, and want to thank you for your service. And
It was kind of a surprise to me to see my name on a brochure as a guest speaker. I didn't know it till I got there.
That was my fault, Roy. I was supposed to call you, and in the lead-up of leaving to get Friday night on time to the welcome party, I did not call you. I am so
The
sorry.
good thing about it is, if a veteran goes to a veterans,
Yeah.
you memorial veterans, you know what to say.
Good, so you were good. You spoke from the heart.
I was good, no problem whatsoever.
I'm embarrassed now. That was
But I
my
really didn't.
fault.
I know they say the mayor designated a guest speaker.
I even called
We
the
don't know who it is, they said.
I even called the American Legion and the commander to tell him, oh, yeah, no, Commissioner Johnson, he's a veteran, he'll speak on behalf of the commission. I'm so sorry.
A little bit of slip out of gear was all.
Well, I'm glad you covered it. I know you did
Covered,
well,
no
so
problem.
thank you for that. I wanted to just quickly ask staff, are we still moving forward on the playground? Did we get bids in?
Bids are out.
Bids are
Not
out?
back yet.
Okay, good, good. So we'll be seeing that soon.
I hope so, yeah.
And the fire station still on target?
On schedule.
Good, on schedule, I like to hear that. One other thing is my computer's been turning off constantly throughout this. It just keeps turning off, turning on, so if you could have Scott take a look at this. I don't know what happened, so.
Is the timing off? The timer shutting it out?
It's shutting it all the way off, so it's
Mine
not
does-
just
mine
like a
does the same
screensaver.
thing.
It shuts
Same
it all the
thing.
way down and
I
then
just
turns
have to
back
hit the
on.
mouse and it comes right back.
It's not doing that, it's shutting all the way down every like couple of minutes, so. And the last thing is actually someone asked about candidates earlier. Who was that?
Mr. Legare.
Mr. Legare. And I should have at that time announced that there are candidates in the room and what they are here for, because, you know, we appreciate you all coming very much, and at this moment, I think we only have 3 in the room, well,
There's
4.
3 over there on that side. So.
So, and so for District 1, if you want me to introduce, actually come up and just say your name very quickly. We'll start with you first, yeah, and then Arthur, and then Jeff.
Deborah Snow, 302 Daytona Avenue, District 1, Holly Hill.
Thank you, Deborah. And Mr. Burns, if you want to come up, Arthur. And then Jeff, you're following him, so be ready.
Thank you. It's interesting. I know almost everybody in the room, and it's great to be here. My name is Arthur J. Burns. I'm running for City Commission District 1, and I'd like your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Delanoy.
Don't forget Jeff. Jeff's coming up.
Yep.
Come on up, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Jeff Delanoy, District 3,
Candidate for commission.
candidate for commissioner.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Delanoy. Appreciate it. And then the last one that we have so far is our own vice mayor, if you'd like to say hi. What are you running for?
Running for mayor. I want your seat.
There we go. This one particular, or?
Maybe we'll get new chairs.
Well, we're not
If anyone's
splitting.
New chairs, yeah.
Right? No splinters.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I want new chairs.
All right. I just wanted to take that moment because it's very important to serve your community, and you don't have to do it by running for office, but I know how much time it takes to do this, and no, he's not running. Am I right?
No.
He's not signed up yet, so that's up to him to talk about. But, so anyways, I just want to thank everybody getting involved. I hope we have more and more of that. So that's all that I have tonight for public comment, or for comments, and we'll start over here with our vice mayor.
I'd just like to publicly thank everyone that came out to my fundraiser that I had a couple weeks ago at the Copper Bottom. We raised $4,300 for a reading program that the Kiwanis Club is going to start at our elementary school. Summer's already here. June 10th, from 9 to 11, every Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to have a reading program to help enrich our kids. Unfortunately, we have the lowest reading score in the entire Volusia County and one of the lowest in the state of Florida. It's tracked at third grade reading proficiency, and our third grade readers are at 27% proficient. Unacceptable. So we're going to try and fix that. So thank you for everyone that came and donated. On that note, many of you probably heard last week that our principal, BJ Vogus, that we had high hopes on to have a little consistency in our school, was relocated. Mr. Forte and I had an opportunity to go to the interview processes for the new candidates. It's my understanding that in the past 14 years, our school has had 8 different principals. And, you know, I equated it to a Major League Baseball team. There's no way you can form a team and win the World Series if they change the manager every 2 years. And so with that, the school board announced tonight that Miss Jennifer Dietz will be our new principal. She comes from Orange City, Joe? Somewhere on the west side. Somewhere on the west side of the county. She came into a school that was having some academic issues, some grade issues. The A to F is how the schools are rated. She helped turn that school around. She's been a principal for 3 years, and we have high hopes that she'll do the same thing with our school. Big changes with our school because the past several years we've been a K-8. We've been a C school, a solid C school. But if you take the middle school grades out of our school grade and the elementary school has to stand on its own, don't be surprised if our school slips to a C- or a D, because the middle school has been carrying the load of the elementary school. So
It's the other way around.
no.
Oh,
So
maybe in behavior.
so behavior is down. Actually, referrals over the last year to year are down 50% over the previous year, which is a great indicator. Mr. Zablo, many of you may have known him. He taught my children. He was also one of the candidates to be selected. He was selected to be the principal of Port Orange Elementary. So good for him. Ms. Campanello is a newly assigned principal, and that name sounds familiar because her father was the principal of the middle school. So she'll be our VP. So we're looking for good things at our new elementary school. And I'm looking for people to read to kids on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 9 to 11. You don't have to commit the entire summer. If you can commit one day, a half an hour, whatever, come see me and I'll sign you up. That's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Vice Mayor, appreciate that. Commissioner Curry.
Thank you, Mayor. I really don't have too much, except for I would like to see us look into that three-way stop on Alabama, for a possibility of having that put in. If everybody else can agree with that. Other than that, I don't have anything
For the
else.
record, I don't agree with that, but
I was going to elaborate a little on what you said. I think the biggest problem with the K through 8 was that there was too much for one principal to handle it. Now that the middle school is getting kind of relocated, they may be able to handle that K, fifth.
If they'll leave our principals alone.
Yeah, if they don't keep moving them. But I
That's
think
all
part
they
of the
keep
reason was they
doing.
were trying to, it's almost like you're trying to
I don't
be
know
a
what
principal
they're
of two
trying to
different
do.
schools, but, so hopefully, yeah. But anyway, I just want to say, I'm sorry I missed the memorial to you yesterday, because I was coming back from seeing my kid in Greenville. That's the first one I missed too. I was looking forward to it. I got on the plane and didn't get back to town till like 5 o'clock, so. But, that's all I have.
thank you, Commissioner Daniel. Commissioner Johnson?
Oh, yeah, and that memorial yesterday, it just, you'd had to be here, just so much, unbelievably, how much better it was having it in front of that memorial than it was in the previous ones, because it had it where everybody could just sit in the chairs right in front of the memorial that was going to speak. The podium was right in front of them, no walking across the road anymore. Everybody sitting off. At 9 o'clock in the morning, you still had the shade from the building of the trees and all that, so it had a little bit of a breeze, so it really couldn't have been much better. It really went super great. I was kind of a little bit upset that we had absolutely no one from the police department showed up at all. We didn't have not one single, that I could see, not one single off-duty, on-duty cop or anything there. Fire department was, so we was represented by them, so that was a good thing. But the only other thing I have is on the TPO. I go to TPO meetings with listeners, try to discuss things and different things they have. And the John Tyler, I don't know if you know John Tyler, he's the secretary of the District 5. and he's put together a safety program to bring in fatalities in District 5 down to zero. Now let me just read a little bit of something here, if you got a minute, just to show how much of a job he has in front of him. And I'm going to kind of round this off. This is not accidents, this is strictly fatalities in District 5, just District 5 fatalities. People that got killed, right at 650 in 2016, 700 in 2017. 2018 went down to 650, just over 650 again. Then it went down to 2019, like almost 700. 2020, you'd think, by being in a pandemic, would really drop almost 700. 764 in 2021. 2022 was the highest. 816 people got killed in District 5. Got killed. In 2023, it dropped down to 730 again, but you know, a lot of people complain about the roundabouts. They don't want the roundabouts. But the way I look at it in roundabouts, it takes away the 90-degree crashes in a roundabout. It's hard to have a 90-degree crash when you have a roundabout. And the most actual fatalities that we have is from lane change and lane departures, people darting from one lane to the other. That's the most fatalities. But the second is intersections. So the more of the roundabouts I think they put in, the less they will have. But surprisingly, I'm only going to go 3 of them, just fatalities. But if you look at it, if you know, intersections, they're the highest accident rate, but they're the second highest fatalities. But I won't go down to 3. And the third one is pedestrians and bicycles. In just the last month, we've had 2 fatalities on bicycles on the eastern side of Volusia County in District 5, you know what I mean? And one was a horrible accident last few days at the elementary school in Port Orange, you know what I mean? This little girl rides a bicycle into a crosswalk and gets hit by a car, sits in traffic. The other one was actually in Holly Hill, you know, so I hope he's on the right track. I hope he can do something. If he could bring all that down to zero, wouldn't that be a great thing? Look how many people have died. If you add up all those fatalities from 2006 up to 2023, and that don't even have anything about 2024 yet. So I hope he can really do it. But I know it can work because I saw this total safety culture thing work at the power company. Quite a few years ago, we started, well, as part of it, we started a zero deal today, and just about completely eliminated accidents at the power company, completely eliminated. Back when they first started, people want to be a lineman. When they first started, there was a known 50% mortality rate. 50% of those linemen knew they was going to get killed when they went to be a lineman. And now we can come down to, the last few years, we got it down to 0. Wow. That's amazing. So it can be done. I hope he knows what he's doing, how he's doing it, and what he's tracking. But if there's anything we can do to support him and help him, and the only thing I know we can do right now is try to be a little bit more safer on the road. And don't think your vehicle is a phone booth, you know what I mean? Amen. But I think that's all. But I mean, it was. Yesterday was the memorial thing, and it was such a sobering, great thing that the Post 120 puts on for us and helps us out with it, and all that really went over great, and it was really a great thing. So, and I'm just so happy that we got the memorial in place and all done before that, because it's going from now on it'll be so much nicer there. You know what I mean? Thanks, guys. I hope.
Just keep rubbing it in. We missed it. Just keep rubbing in how good it was.
It was good. It was amazingly good. A lot better than I thought it would be. A lot better than I thought it would be.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
That's all I have, Mayor.
Is there any further before this commission? All right, I'll just remind you all that we have to hurry into another meeting, and so this meeting is now adjourned.